Hey everybody. Today we are going to continue on with our beach theme. As you can see, our lovely background here. And we're going to talk about social stratification. So we just finished up crime and we're kind of keeping on moving on. Okay, so what is social stratification? What it is it's the division of society into ranks, classes, categories. You've heard of it before. We have the middle class system in the U.S., the lower class, the working poor, so on and so forth. So characteristics that cause these divisions are going to vary from society to society. Here in the U.S., it's typically money that's going to do that. But in countries like China and India, um, you're going to be put in categories based on your gender, based on how much land you own, what kind of farm animals you own, possibly. So it's gonna vary from culture to culture. Both ascribed and achieved statuses can be used in determining social standing. So you don't always, it's not always fair, right? If it's ascribed, then you may just be kind of out of luck with what you're born with. So these divisions in the stratification are going to cause social inequality. And what social inequality is just an unequal sharing of resources and social rewards. So some people may not get all the money. Some people may have way less than somebody, right? We see that today. Bill Gates is making a heck of a lot more than I am. And stratification systems can also be opened or closed. And what that means is it's just on how easy or hard it is to go from status to status. How easy is it for us to go from low class to upper class? So there's different types of stratification systems. The first one we're going to talk about is a caste system. You've probably heard of it in India before. That's the most prominent example. And this system is a closed stratification system. You can't move in between them very easily. And it's based on ascribed statuses, so it's not achieved. It's what you're born with. Like I said, gender, your parents' financial standing is going to take a large effect into this as well. Your lifelong status is determined on who your parents are and who their parents are. So in this caste system, it's going to prohibit exogamy, which is just marriage outside of your caste. Okay, so let's say that you are low class. They're going to encourage you to marry low class. They do not want you marrying a rich person. Okay, you know what you know, and that's all you know. So like I said, the most prominent one is in India. As we progress in society, it's kind of been challenged, but it still dictates life in India. So here's an example of India's caste system. Up at the top, you have Brahmins, priests. They have the most power in society. Right below them, you have Kshatriyas, warriors, rulers, governmental figures. Under that, you got Vaisyas. These are your skilled traders, your merchants, officials, Sudras, unskilled workers, so those who partake in physical labor. And at the very low end is what's called the pariahs. These are the outcasts in society. They're often called the untouchables. They they have nowhere near the rights of anybody else. They have the worst jobs they're given, worst places to live. They have it quite rough from the get go. You're born into that class. Okay, so class systems. Typically, it's more open than a caste system. It's not as closed. You can move between classes and classes. And this is based on achieved statuses. Okay, so you earn these. You're not born with them. It has some control over place in society. And Karl Marx, he divided the society into what's called the bourgeoisie. So these are the owners of the means of production. So like factory owners, essentially the owners, and then the workers who sell their labor in exchange for wages. Max Weber, he describes three factors in class or of class that make up class: property, prestige, and power. Okay, so we'll get into that a little bit more. Dimensions of social stratification. Okay, so your social class is a grouping of people with similar levels of wealth, power, and prestige. So wealth, what is wealth? Wealth is all of your assets. Okay, so this is not strictly money. What kind of car do you drive? The house you own, other capital that you may have, other things that you may own. Okay, other property. So in the United States, very unequal distribution of wealth. 1% of population is going to control 1/3 of the wealth in the United States. Okay, so if there's 100 people and there's $100, we'll say one person is going to control $33. Pretty crazy to think about. Power is the ability to control the behavior of others with or without consent. Now that term seems a little bit more extreme than we realize, but thinking about it, it is true to the definition. Okay, it can be based on actual physical force or a special skill or type of knowledge that one possesses, personal characteristics. Prestige is the respect, honor, recognition, or courtesy that an individual receives. So occupation, education, family background, area of residence are common factors in the U.S. of how much prestige you are going to receive. Okay. So socioeconomic status, you've probably heard this term before. What it is it's a rating that combines social factors such as your educational level, what kind of job do you hold, and place of residence, where you live, what area do you live in, and it combines this all with your factor of income, how much money you make. Okay, you may hear people say, I have a low socioeconomic standing or I have a high socioeconomic standing. Like everything in sociology, two different theories try to explain this or reason with stratification. So we'll start off with the functionalist theory. And they see this as a necessary feature to a smooth running society. Okay, so they will not believe in communism where everything's kind of equaled off. They think that you need to have these systems of stratification. So certain roles must be performed for society to be stable. Okay, there's people out there that we need to have our doctors, we need to have our teachers, we need to have our equipment operators, things like that. Every single role in society has to be filled. And then without varying rewards, some jobs would go unfilled. Okay. For example, I don't know, a doctor. That would be a very stressful job. Okay, but there's a high level of pay, there's a high level of reward. People seek that job. Now, critics of this point out that within stratification, that not everybody has the same access to resources. Okay, and we know that this is true, especially if you go back, 70 years ago. African Americans were behind the eight ball from the beginning. They had no real access to these resources. Okay, now the other way of explaining this is conflict theory. And like everything, they're going to see competition in this. There's scarce resources out there. There's so many resources out there. That's why these levels of stratification happen. Okay, your people like Bill Gates, they're going to make your money. And then your people like poor Mr. Allens are poor and suffering. Stratification comes from classes being exploited, the rich taking advantage of the poor. A group in power can sort of shape their policies to maintain its power. Um, so those who have power can sometimes they can influence. That's the word I was looking for. Um, other lawmakers who may shape these policies into their favor. Now, critics point out that not everybody is suited for every position, so it's good to have this conflict. Okay, that is it for today.